attended. We've got 58 people on Zoom and about 60 people on Facebook Live. So that's amazing. That's over 100 people who are tuning in to this second public meeting for the Downtown Lancaster Roundabouts project. My name is Tanya Zwalin. I'm from Highland Planning. I'm a public engagement consultant that the village hired for this project. We also have members of the village board in attendance, as well as the mayor. I just want to go over a little bit of instructions on how this meeting will work. Jeff, can you advance the next slide? So probably a lot of you have not attended a public meeting using Zoom, however, or Facebook Live, but probably some of you have used Zoom in the past few months as we've been in quarantine and social distancing. So for the purposes of this meeting, we're going to give a brief presentation. It'll be about 20 or 25 minutes, and then we're going to move to a Q&A period. So while we're giving the presentation, I would ask everybody to mute your microphone so that we can reduce background noise during the presentation. You do have an ability to, for those of you in Zoom, you have an ability to raise your hand. And if you'd like to speak during the Q&A period, audibly speak, you can raise your hand. And when we get to that portion of the meeting, I'll call on you. And then you can unmute your audio and ask your question. For those of you on the phone, although let's see, yes, we do have some people on the phone. So for those of you on the phone, you're automatically muted. And if you want to unmute yourself, you can use *6. And if you want to raise your hand to speak, you can use *9. So *6 to mute and unmute, *9 to raise your hand. For those of you who are using Zoom, you can use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen on the Zoom controls to submit questions in writing during the webinar, and we will be monitoring those and be responding to those during the Q&A period. So that's if you don't want to speak, but you still want to submit a question. There's also a chat. You can send a question to us through that. And finally, I want to say that we are live streaming to Facebook and we are reviewing the comments there. So if you're not using Zoom and you're looking at Facebook, you can post a comment there and we will be looking at that and monitoring that and incorporating it into the Q&A period. Okay, with that, Jeff, I think I'm going to hand it over to you. You might need to unmute.
Thank you, Tanya. So that's the first lesson for tonight, is to make sure that you know how to mute and unmute. Thank you to everybody who's participating tonight. This meeting was originally intended to occur either in late March or early April. Of course, things changed all that, and this is not this is not what we wanted to do, but it is a chance for us to hopefully inform you about the project and answer any questions that you might have about what's happened and what's coming up. So just quickly tonight, we're going to go through this presentation in about 20 minutes, I hope. What we want to cover is, how was this project conceived? Where did it come from? We want to talk a little bit about all of the public outreach that has occurred. The village board is really committed to getting as much public information and involvement as possible. So we're going to talk about that. I want to talk a little bit about the project status, because this is a federally funded project and there are a lot of steps that have to be taken. So we'll just go through those quickly. We'll then talk about the concept that's been developed and you've seen in the materials that were provided for the meeting. And finally, we'll talk about what happens next. Why am I not? All right, so for the history of this project, and for those of you who attended the first public meeting, you also saw these same slides, but this project actually goes back about 20 years to the what was called the CBD Revitalization Plan in 1998. And there were two specific recommendations in that plan. One was to establish some gateways to the Central Business District, and also to improve Pleasant Avenue and Central Avenue to make them more pedestrian friendly. And then jumping ahead to the comprehensive plan in 2018, again, a recommendation for complete streets on Central Avenue and Pleasant Avenue. And then a downtown development strategy that was put together, and specific recommendations of that plan called for a road diet on Pleasant Avenue and to install traffic circles at Pleasant Avenue and Central, and at Pleasant Avenue and North Aurora. And then in 2019, the village applied for and was approved for a CMAQ grant, which stands for Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Improvement. And I just want to quickly touch on a few of the key requirements of that grant and how that affects the project. The grant is only for transportation projects that improve air quality and provide congestion relief. So that's one of the requirements of what the project has to achieve. The amount that the village received from DOT is just a little bit over $3 million. That's 80% of what the project is expected to cost. For intersection improvements, the NISDOT recommendations are that the primary objectives are to minimize conflict and provide acceptable capacity. So that basically means to do everything we can to make it a safer intersection and a more efficient intersection. And then finally, roundabouts are what the state DOT prefers when they are either feasible or cost effective. And we can talk about that a little bit more as we go on. But that's the requirements of the grant that is funding this project. So when the village looked at what they wanted to do on these streets and intersections, pretty basic objectives that anybody would want to do for their community, and that's to improve your air quality, to make it safer, to have more people out enjoying walking and bicycling and taking advantage of those travel modes that are healthy, and also to improve mobility for all users. So that means, people who might have, some restrictions to how they can move. So we want to make sure that, there's access provided and that there's transit options. And of course, what really helps is that if there's some private investment that goes along with the development, that additional tax revenue can really stimulate your economy. And finally, we want to promote sustainability. And so specifically things like reducing, stormwater runoff into the surface water bodies, or reducing the amount of energy that's used as part of the project. So I mentioned the commitment to public engagement. And this is a quick listing of the things that have occurred since the project started at the end of 2019. Highland Planning conducted interviews with a few key stakeholders to learn about the village concerns and ideas about this project. That led to a public engagement plan that was approved by the village board. We met with the adjacent property owners in January. We went door to door to all the business owners on Central Avenue and West Main Street in late January. We put information on the village website. We conducted a public meeting at the Lancaster Opera House at the beginning of February this year. We also were present at the Lancaster Family Fun Night, and hopefully found some more people who weren't able to attend that first public meeting. We did a mailing this last week to over 5,000 households in the village. We met again with the stakeholders in the corridor, and we're going to provide a survey to everybody for the next 30 days. So there's been a real attempt to inform people and to get their input on this project. Now, as part of that, we've learned a lot of things. And as you might expect, there are very mixed opinions about roundabouts. And hopefully from this meeting tonight, I can address some of your questions and provide some information that will help you understand roundabouts better. There's also questions about, is this project needed? Is the traffic is there a problem with the amount of traffic? How much is it going to cost the village, and how will that cost be paid? Pedestrian safety, are roundabouts safer for pedestrians? Also, how do roundabouts accommodate buses and trucks? And from our meetings with the adjacent property owners, there's certainly concerns about how the project will affect their property, and specifically their driveways and parking. And a lot of people are also concerned about what happens during construction when travel choices are somewhat constrained and you have a construction project in your village. So, as I mentioned earlier, the federal aid process requires a variety of steps that have to be gone through. So we started out with the public outreach to hear from the community about their ideas, concerns, issues. We also conducted a pretty extensive range of environmental studies that have to be done as part of the federal aid process, and those include things like examining surface waters, the effect of the project on surface waters, effect on endangered species, effect on cultural and historic resources, if there's any environmental contamination in the site. So all those things were done in early 2020, and the good news is there really aren't any major environmental obstacles. There are a few things that we have to be aware of, and we can talk about those later. We then developed some alternatives to consider for the project, and we analyzed those alternatives. After we analyzed the alternatives, we prepared preliminary plans for the feasible alternative. We developed the cost estimates for that alternative, and there's a draft design report which will be on the website next week for people to look through. And then here we are tonight with some more public outreach, and the public outreach we get tonight will also be fed back into the design report and the preliminary plans. And so there's sort of an iterative process here that we go through to, do as much as we can to address the community's ideas. So I talked about the analysis of the alternatives. So one of the questions that people have asked is about the traffic on the streets and at the intersections. This is just some basic data that shows that north of Pleasant, about 15,000 cars a day on Central Avenue, which is that's about close to the limit for a street that has 2 travel lanes. And about 4% of that traffic is trucks. Pleasant Avenue between Central and North Aurora is about 7,000 vehicles a day. And North Aurora Street south of Pleasant is a little over 8,000. And as you all know, there's quite a trend of the traffic using North Aurora Street to Pleasant to Central and vice versa. So there's a lot of traffic that flows in that movement. At the intersections themselves, Pleasant and Central during the afternoon peak hour has about 1,500 vehicles using the intersection. That'll go up to about a little over 1,700 in the future. So just a little bit less than 1% a year over the next 22 years. And there were 3 crashes per year, and it's actually 9 crashes over 3 years because we have to analyze the most recent 3-year period, but there were 9 crashes in that 3-year period. Pleasant North Aurora obviously doesn't have as much traffic, so the increase will be slightly less, and the crashes there have actually been very low, so that's good news for everybody. We had 4 alternatives that we analyzed with this traffic data, and those alternatives are the no build, which as you can understand is to do nothing. We also looked at just improving the signal timing at the intersections, which was a suggestion from the February 6th meeting. We also looked at improving the signal timing, but also trying to do the road diet and making the roads a little bit smaller and the intersections a little bit smaller to make them safer for pedestrians and slow vehicles down. And then we did the roundabouts at the two intersections. And we evaluated the results of that analysis against their benefits for how they affected delay and congestion, safety, bicycle and pedestrian features, and their ability to stimulate economic development. These were those objectives we talked about earlier. So the signal timing definitely improves delay and congestion, but really doesn't do much else in terms of safety or bicycle or economic development. The road diet is almost the exact opposite with the signals, because it would improve bicycle and pedestrian and economic development, a little bit of safety improvement by narrower roadways, but it did not improve the intersection delay or air quality. And the roundabouts did improve all four of the objectives that we analyzed the alternatives against. So with that, we developed the concept that you're seeing on your computer screen now. This is the two roundabouts, and I also want to point out that the roundabout at West Main Street is shown on here. That is a separate project. It will be under construction shortly. We have been in complete coordination with that design team to make sure that these two roundabouts work together well. So all of the analysis that was done in that previous discussion did account for the West Main Street extension and the mini roundabout on North Aurora. So I want to just zoom in on a couple of the areas of this concept plan right now and go through some of the things that we can talk about during the questions and answers. So at the roundabout at Central Avenue, the current location shown in this drawing does have some impacts on property owners and the local businesses. So we have talked to them. We are looking at ways to reduce that impact, to address their concerns about parking and how their customers can get to their properties. There is a clock in the median on Pleasant Avenue. Where it goes is up in the air. So if there's somebody who's got a great idea for that clock, we'd love to hear it. If you have an idea for what would go in the center of the roundabout, that's also something that's important. And I also want to point out that this design is coordinated with the Central Avenue bicycle lanes project that will be implemented this season. And that is to put 5-foot bicycle lanes on each side of Central Avenue all the way to Walden, and it would eliminate parking on the east side of Central Avenue. At the North Aurora roundabout, we are impacting one driveway, and we're meeting with that property owner this week to talk about ideas on how to adjust their driveway. I did mention that we've coordinated with the West Main Street mini roundabout, and we have a nice dividing line between the two projects, so there won't be any tearing up newly constructed roadway. So they'll build their portion, and then this portion, assuming it's built this way, would mesh right in with that. This particular location also gives us a lot of opportunities for what we call green infrastructure, which is a method for doing a natural stormwater treatment. And there is a flood control easement here as part of the Cayuga Creek flood improvements that were done many years ago. And it's not a major obstacle, but we do have to go through a permit process with the Department of Environmental Conservation and the Corps of Engineers. So that's one of those environmental things that I mentioned that we do have to take care of. Between the two roundabouts, this is the road diet on Pleasant Avenue West. The concept shown has 11-foot travel lanes, 1 in each direction, 6-foot bike lanes, some parking. Two things I want to point out are the mid-block crosswalk that would accommodate pedestrians from Lancaster Towers and give them a safe crossing of the roadway to get to the stores on the other side of the street. They would cross one lane of traffic. There'd be a pedestrian refuge. We could also add some special signs there if that is needed, but you know, this is specifically oriented towards the population there at the towers. We're also intending to restrict left turns in and out of those two driveways. So either one of them would be right in, right out, but if you do want to go the other direction, you make your right turn, you go down to the roundabout, you go around it, and you come back the other way. So it's really not a major inconvenience, and it would make the intersection much safer. And we also note that we're going to improve the bus stops on either side of the street there for the people who use the bus. Here's an example of some of the stormwater treatments that we're proposing along the street. These are what are called sidewalk planters or rain gardens or swales. There's a variety of names that they're called by, but the intention of these is to collect rainwater, let it go into the ground in a natural way, you know, have some nice plants, some trees, and then let that water get treated naturally before it eventually finds its way back to the creek. Here's a close-up of that cross-section of the road diet, just showing you know, how the vehicles would be arranged on the street. So at this point, I would just quickly like to talk about some of the details and information about roundabouts. And on this slide, we're looking at the 5 major benefits that roundabouts provide for intersections. And number 1, and most importantly, is safety. As you can see on this slide, they reduce fatal and injury crashes by as much as 75%. And if you remember our first public meeting in February, Tom Sweeney told the story about his brother at a signalized intersection in Texas. And I think, you know, those are the things that we all fear about signalized intersections. And if you can eliminate those type of serious injury or fatal crashes, that's a major benefit right there to public health and public costs. They also increase capacity, and I want to clarify that capacity does not mean speed. Roundabouts force people to slow down as they come up to the intersection, but you have to yield if there's a vehicle in the intersection. If the roundabout's properly designed, you'll have to slow down just to maneuver it. And the main thing is, though, you're still generally moving. So you actually get through the intersection faster, but you're going slower because you're still moving as compared to sitting at a red light. And I think we can all, you know, we all understand that on a busy intersection, it's one thing to sit at a signal, but, you know, at 10 o'clock at night when there's no traffic, you know, to sit at a signal for 30 seconds is kind of an annoyance. And so that leads into item number 3, which is the environment. So keeping those cars from sitting there, idling their engines, does reduce emissions and reduces fuel consumption. So that's a big advantage there. You also don't have to pay for the electricity for the traffic signals or send crews out to fix broken wires or replace light bulbs. So $5,000 a year roughly in the maintenance costs of a signalized intersection. So for a 20-year lifespan, you're looking at $100,000 per intersection that you're saving. And finally is the aesthetics. These as we talked about the objectives of the previous plans and having some kind of gateway treatments to indicate that you've arrived at someplace special, you know, these roundabouts can really achieve that objective for a community redevelopment project. Here's some graphs and information showing that safety benefit of roundabouts. The top 2 figures on the left show that in a roundabout there are exactly 8 conflict points as compared to 32 conflict points in a signalized intersection. The lower 2 show that a roundabout has 8 pedestrian conflict points compared to 16 in a signalized intersection. So That alone talks about why the injury reduction is so significant and why the overall collisions come down is there's just less possibilities. And I will admit that there still are collisions at roundabouts, but they are not, they don't cause injury and they usually don't cause major damage to the vehicles because everybody's going slow. Here is a model that we've prepared showing the operation of the roundabout in 2042 with the additional traffic from Lancaster Village Center development. And I think you'll see that the vehicles are moving through the intersections. They yield if there's somebody else in the intersection. The trucks, these are designed to accommodate the largest size highway truck. So 53-foot trailers are accommodated in these roundabouts. And you can see that there's also gaps in the traffic. So those gaps are created by some of the signals either upstream or downstream, or people yielding while they're waiting at the roundabout. So there's still gaps that allow pedestrians to cross safely and provide for this efficient Pleasant Avenue constructed while we signalized in at the two locations and would have the westbound West Pleasant detoured either on West Main or Broadway. There would be some short-term closures or detours to accommodate those areas with the red arrows, but those would be very short-term. And then following the completion of this, which gets more than half of the work done, the second phase of that would do the south side of Pleasant, and the detour would be for eastbound traffic. Again, there still would be traffic signals in place to control the intersections until they are eventually opened up to traffic. So we're just about done. Right now, we've met with the property owners last week. We're conducting our meeting tonight. We're going to, get lots of ideas and learn things from you tonight and the next month. We'll incorporate those into our designs and our design report. We'll start the right-of-way appraisals process. And then if all goes well in the fall of this year, we'll have design approval, which will allow us to initiate right-of-way acquisition. We'll also be applying for those permits I mentioned for the flood control easement. We'll start detailed design. And then once the design is done and the right-of-way is complete, which we would anticipate to be the middle of 2021, we would have another public meeting to go through the detailed plans about the construction impacts. And, we'd have more information describing how the project would actually be constructed. And then the intent is that by September of 2021, the project will be put out to bid and construction would be completed sometime in 2022. So with that, I'm going to say that there's going to be a survey available on the village website. I think it's available now. And that will be open for 30 days. So until June 30th, you can take the survey and we'd love to get your comments on that. And now I'm going to turn it over to Tanya and we'll be happy to answer your questions and listen to your ideas and comments. Thank you very much.
So that survey, for those of you who are on Zoom, and there's 73 attendees, when you exit the meeting, if you're not, if you want, you will automatically be linked to that survey. But so that survey, for those of you who are on Zoom, and there's 73 attendees, when you exit the meeting, if you're not, if you want, you will automatically. Sorry about that. We were getting feedback there. So if you want, you can take the survey right after this meeting tonight, or you can go to the village's web site for this project and take the survey there through June 30th. Okay, so I do have one person who has their hand raised and would like to talk, and that is JMI Coley. So would you like to speak first?
Sure. Can you hear me?
We can.
Good. My question is not about the roundabouts, but about West Pleasant. And there seems to be some conflicting information as to whether or not there's going to be parking on West Pleasant. I had asked that question of the village board not too long ago, and the response that I received, apparently was sent to a committee, was that there would be some parking on West Pleasant. In looking at the renderings today, the first picture you had that was almost like a photograph that showed a future building being built there, showed bike lanes and no parking. There was another rendering, the overhead rendering showed no parking, but then when you showed the street level, it looks like there was, I think it was 8-foot parking on both sides. So is there going to be parking on Pleasant or no?
Hi, this is Jeff. The plans right now call for parking on both sides of West Pleasant at the west end of the street. That would be west of the driveways to Lancaster Towers and Save-A-Lot. So when you looked at that first
to
overhead,
Aurora?
yes,
How many parking spaces, do you know?
it would be between 10 and 12 spaces in that section,
On each side?
total.
Okay. All right, thank you. That's all I have.
Thanks.
Okay, next we're gonna go to Lori Thomas, and then I'm gonna get to the comments that are coming in on Facebook and the chat as well.
Oh, I see. I'm supposed to verbally ask my question. My question about West Main is, were the crossing for Lancaster Towers, I thought during the actual meeting we had earlier this year, there was going to be a hawk light there for the residents to use to get across West Main Street.
Thank you for that question. There would not be a hawk light because that is, well, I don't think there's enough traffic to warrant a hawk light, but what we were thinking about was what's called a rectangular rapid flashing beacon, which is a pedestrian actuated flashing light. And we use those at other intersections. They're very effective. So the pedestrian comes up and presses the button, and that starts a flashing light on the sign. And we've also made those to be have audible push buttons. So for somebody who's hearing impaired, they would be able to push it and say the light is flashing. You know.
So they would still have to hope that somebody's going to slow down and not run them over, right?
That's correct. That's correct, but it's, you know, I think a lot of drivers in the last few years have become very accustomed to mid-block crosswalks and yield to pedestrian signs.
I don't know. I walk the village streets and had several near misses right at even at Central and Brady, down at Pleasant. People want to make the right. They don't want to stop. And there's no little yellow sign saying, you know, pedestrians in the crosswalk, even though that's any crosswalk in wherever, pedestrians, I mean, have the right of way in a crosswalk if you're in it.
Well, that's a good point. If you're at a crosswalk that's next to an intersection where people are making right turns, you're absolutely right, because the driver is looking to the left, looking for a gap. That would not be the case at these pedestrian crosswalks that we're proposing, because the drivers would only be looking straight ahead. There's no intersection there. So that's the advantage of a mid-block crosswalk that's not at a driveway. But you are right, when you're next to a driveway, those right turns are, you know, they're not looking to their right usually.
Right. Okay. Can I ask another question?
Sure. I do want to say to everybody, you know, we are going to wrap this up at 7:30 tonight.
Okay.
So we
I didn't know if there's a lineup. Okay, I
but
can ask.
no, if it's a quick question, I'll try to give a quick answer. So
I'm already losing my train here. Back to the intersections with the air quality. Since most cars, I know my car has a echo that it shuts down, it stalls itself.
yes.
And most cars, like newer cars, I hear them all the time at intersections. You know, I can hear them start up. Is that such an important factor anymore with cars that are able to do it? And does this have this administration's approval? Because this administration has been eliminating EPA laws and requirements. Is there a big rush to get this federal money?
Well, okay. So that's a really interesting and good question. The first part of that has to do with, you know, what types of vehicles there are, and you know, there definitely are more electric vehicles. There are more vehicles with the auto stop. For that reason, there still are a lot of cars that don't have those things, and until the funding rules change, this is a, you know, a program that started many years ago, before we were even thinking about electric cars.
Right.
So maybe the cars are a little bit ahead of the policy, but this is what the Federal Highway Administration and the New York State DOT are trying to do, is improve air quality. And if it's for 50% of the cars, well, that's still better than nothing. And your second part about the administration, I mean, I just don't know, but I think in terms of, you know, what we all sort of want for our communities is a quieter and, you know, cleaner air in our communities.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Jeff, I'm going to share some of the comments that have come in through the Q&A and through the chat and through Facebook Live. And I have organized them by topic, and I'll go through the ones that are getting the most comments, so we can sort of respond to the topics that people are asking about most. And I do see that there are 6 people with their hand raised, but I'm going to go through this a couple of these first and see if we answer your question or your comment. So some of these are comments, some of them are questions. So the first one, I think the people are commenting the most about safety. So we did get some questions around how many accidents have occurred at each intersection and how many fatalities or serious injuries have occurred. Someone heard you say 9 crashes, and I think they wanted more detail on that. A comment, all of the people that cross at Pleasant and Central are going to be dodging cars now. We'll go from 9 accidents to lots of kids getting hit dodging them. There was a comment about safety related to people not realizing that there's a roundabout and driving straight into it. Another question about, you know, have there been any fatalities? And then we got some comments about safety. Glad that Lancaster Towers will have their own crosswalk, saying this project is good for the environment and pedestrians, stating that people cross in the middle of Aurora anyway right now, and this will make it safer due to reduced speeds. And then one question, someone might have missed this, but a concern about the people of Lancaster Towers and their ability to get across the street to Rite Aid and save a lot. How are they to cross? So can you address the traffic and the crashes questions first, and then we'll get to pedestrian safety?
Sure. So for accident analysis, which we also call crashes, because an accident is something that is happens without any involvement, and what happens on the street are really crashes. So we have to look at the last 3 years of data provided by the New York State Department of Motor Vehicles. And so for the most recent 3 years at the 2 intersections, there were 9 crashes at Central Avenue and West Pleasant. And there was 1 crash at Aurora and Pleasant Avenue West. So like I said, that was a really good thing to see that intersection is, has not had crashes. The rate of crashes is something we then look at, and there is an average crash rate for different types of intersections. And so for the average crash rate at Central and Pleasant Avenue West, with those 9 crashes, or 3 per year, the average crash rate at that intersection is slightly higher than the statewide average. So, it's not significantly higher, but it is higher than the average. So there were no fatalities in the 3-year period that we examined. And I'll just say that, we all go out there on the streets, and we all are aware of people being distracted when they're driving. So there's always going to be, there's always the possibility of something happening. And with roundabouts, there have been many studies done over the more than 20 years that they've been installed in the United States. If people want to see those studies, I'll be happy to refer you to them. But the Insurance Institute of Highway Safety, which is an independent research organization, they've done a lot of studies on roundabouts. And notice I said Insurance Institute. Insurers do not like car accidents. And so the Insurance Institute has conclusively found that both for vehicular and pedestrian crashes, that roundabouts are much safer than regular intersections. So when it comes to safety, there are lots of facts that point out they're safer. Now, they're not 100% safe, and nothing really is. So to the point about knowing about their coming up, there is a standard signing hierarchy that starts with a roundabout. So you're notified 500 feet before the roundabout that there's a roundabout coming up. Central Avenue is also going to be narrower as a result of the bike lanes, so people will be traveling slower anyway. So the whole idea is to get everybody to slow down, and by driving slower, you can react quicker, your car stops faster. If you hit something, you don't cause the same amount of damage. There's just a lot of good things about slowing people down and getting them to pay attention to the road. And so I think, I have no qualms in saying that these roundabouts will be safer than what's out there now.
Can we go to, how is this easier for pedestrians when the traffic is constantly flowing?
Well, the traffic has to yield when they come up to the roundabout. Now, if you look at a roundabout, you'll see some dotted lines that go around the outside circle, and that's the yield line. And so a car comes up to that and they have to yield, and most drivers, if there's no traffic, they do a rolling stop just like they would do at a 4-way stop with no traffic coming. However, that yield line is actually 20 feet in front of where the crosswalk is. So while that car goes by you and slows down, that's when the pedestrian walks. So, I'll point out that pedestrians need to look at the driver. They need to be standing at that crosswalk and looking at the driver. A lot of pedestrians, I shouldn't say a lot, but we do know that people are walking across crosswalks when they're looking at their phones rather than so, but that's what's happening at a roundabout, is the first car is actually past you before you start walking. And while it's slowing down to yield, that's when you cross one lane of traffic. And that one lane of traffic takes about less than 5 seconds to cross. So that one car that has to wait for you is really not inconvenienced at all. That's how they're safer for pedestrians.
So I have one other question related to safety, which is, where did you get your data from?
The two places that I'll start with are the Insurance Institute of Highway Safety. Just Google that name, Insurance Institute of Highway Safety. And the American Association of Retired Persons also has a data sheet on roundabouts and how they're safer for older people. And if you really want to get into it, go to the Federal Highway Administration website and look at their information on roundabouts. There's several manuals and information sheets on roundabout safety.
What about local data? Where's your local data from?
The most recent local data comes from the city of Olean. They installed 5 roundabouts on their main street through the village, or through their city. And last December, their city engineer assessed the number of accidents at the roundabout and, concluded that there were less accidents at those intersections than there had been before, and less severe accidents.
And existing Lancaster data on crashes came from?
The New York State Department of Motor Vehicles.
Okay. I muted myself. Okay, so another topic that is coming in a lot is around this decision. So the comments say taxpayers have no say. Why weren't we asked to vote on this? We don't count. They just want our money. So can we talk about the overall decision-making process for this project? I think I'll stop there.
Well, that's a great question, and that's why I brought up the history of the planning documents for the village downtown. This has been talked about in the community. There has been public outreach during those periods. The 2018 downtown initiative was in response to the $10 million downtown revitalization initiatives that New York State is providing. And that then led to the application for the state DOT grant. So there have been articles in the paper that people could have learned about these projects, but from the point of the DOT, from once the village obtained that grant, there's, it was applied for. The funding source has those requirements that it has to be used to achieve air quality and reduce congestion. And as far as I know, there's no provisions in any state or any local government that allows for voting on capital improvements to infrastructure. These are all things that are discussed and included in the budgets. So this has been in the works. I would defer to anybody on the board of trustees if I made a mistake in saying that, but it has gone through the government process to obtain the grant, to make the match to the grant. And, I know there have been stories in the newspaper related to this as far as the other developments in the village of Lancaster.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to do one more question that has come in through the chat and Facebook and the Q&A, and then I'm going to go back to the attendees. So I'm getting a lot of questions around the cost. How much will this cost? What is the total cost to taxpayers? Like 20% of what amount? Can you answer that one?
Yes. The total grant, the value of the grant from the New York State Department of Transportation is about $3.8 million. And of that, the village share is about $780,000 or something like that. That's the village share of that grant. That was based on an estimate done as part of the feasibility study for the project. We have since estimated the cost of the concept plan shown in the presentation tonight. That cost is less than that preliminary cost. So, you know, the village share would be correspondingly lower. I do want to point out that the grant from the state DOT is only for the 2 intersections. So there is about 500 to 700 feet on Pleasant Avenue West that is not included in that funding. So my understanding is that by the estimate for the roundabouts being less, that overage could go towards that cost. But when all is said and done, I think the cost to the village is going to be about $1 million for the entire project. That's both roundabouts and Pleasant Avenue West.
Thank you. Okay, let's go back to the attendees who have their hands raised. I'd like to go to Dave Earl.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. My question is, well, I have a couple, but one of them was that the state DOT. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. My question is, well, I have a couple, but one of them was that when would something be considered not feasible? Given the tightness of this area, the small, I guess if you will, intersection, the businesses that are in the way, what are some examples of things that would be considered not feasible?
Good question. The impact on right-of-way is certainly one of them. You know, we have just started the process of talking about right-of-way and how it affects the local or the adjacent properties. But we're not talking about having to acquire, you know, full parcels. These are very small corners at the intersections, so we're trying to minimize that. Another thing that would make it not feasible would be some kind of environmental obstacle like wetlands or something like that.
Okay.
So I would say those are the 2 major pieces.
Thank you. A lot of the studies that I'm hearing about are traffic, automobile traffic. And of course, it's, you know, 3 accidents a year, none fatal. And it doesn't sound like they're accidents that cause much damage to the vehicles either. What about studies as far as foot traffic? Because while we might be able to explain that roundabouts do create safety for car traffic, it's the foot traffic that everybody seems to be concerned about. And I can tell you, I do a lot of business down on Central Avenue, and I'm regularly waiting for people to yield to me in a crosswalk. So what type of studies were done on the amount of foot traffic here, especially then in comparison to places like Olean and the other areas that we're trying to compare automobile traffic? Where are we comparing those studies of foot traffic to in the area?
Well, we have pedestrian counts, and those are included in the analysis of the intersections. When it comes to the, you know, I guess you're looking for analysis of pedestrian safety of some kind. You know, at this point, all we have are those examples that, you know, by vehicles going slower, by distances being shortened, that there are less pedestrian crashes. And like I said, we have all kinds of studies that have, you know, comprehensive studies that have focused on this, that have shown that these are safer ways to accommodate pedestrians. You know, you mentioned standing and waiting for a vehicle to yield to you, but I would assume that eventually one did, and then you're able to cross the street, and that's what we want. Instead of the old ways of trying to run across when there's no pedestrian facility, now we're making a spot where pedestrians know they can go. And you know, we talk about Pleasant Avenue West becoming a complete street, and that means that everybody has to be respectful of the other users of that street. So all we're doing is trying to shift the focus from only cars to cars and pedestrians and cyclists and, you know, buses and everybody who can possibly travel on that street, and make them all feel like they have a fair opportunity to use it.
Sure, I do understand. Although a red light kind of means an automatic, you know, they have to stop as opposed to a yield where I'm guessing if they will. My last thing is, if we were not getting a grant at all from the DOT, would we be doing this? Would this be up for consideration? Or is this largely because we can have it funded mostly 80% through grant? It's become a discussion. Would the village be doing this or even studying this without the grant?
Well, the village, you know, through their planning process said they wanted to do it. And that's the way that the planning processes work, is that you establish a vision for your community and you find out who the implementing agencies are and where the fund sources are. So the Village of Lancaster over the years has decided that their vision is to make Pleasant Avenue more of a complete street and have the two intersections serve as gateways. And they've found a mechanism to fund that. So I really can't answer, you know, what they would have done if they didn't get the grant, but I do know they followed a very, you know, common and traditional practice of doing urban improvements.
Thank you for hosting the forum tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. I'm going to read a couple comments that have come in and then move to a live question. So these are mostly coming in through Facebook. Europe has been using roundabouts for decades. Being from the Hamburg area, I agree they made it much more efficient and safe there. Hamburg made it happen in tight spaces too. Once people get used to these, it'll be a comfortable flow. Lanes should really be marked on Central Ave first. That has been an ongoing debate for years. Another comment, it's a major expense my taxes pay for, same as the garbage totes. I'm gonna read 3 more. Business owner and resident here, this project is so exciting. We will be safer, greener, and more walkable. I've lived in the village for 15 years, but rarely stay for food and entertainment because of a lack of the above mentioned. This is bringing in so much opportunity to our beautiful village. They also plan on adding a bike lane right by the creek along with a park. Cool to me. And then last one, I'm working with over a dozen small businesses looking to locate in the village of Lancaster, and they are all very excited to see this type of forward thinking to support a growing, vibrant village for everyone to enjoy. We've been stagnant for too long, and I see so much progress and foresight in our leaders. Thank you for your leadership and vision. Okay, now let's shift over to Lori, who has her hand raised, L-O-R-R-I-E.
Yes, I'm Lori O'Connor, and as a representative of the owner of Lancaster Towers, I just want to say that we fully support the design. It provides a safer alternative for the residents crossing the street. In particular, I believe it's a high intensity activated crosswalk signal. And if that's going to be part of the project, that will definitely help our residents cross in a safer way. Also the right turn only from the parking lot. It adds another layer of safety, you know, for anyone that approaches that cross area. So I don't have a question. I just wanted to comment and say that we do fully support this and really do believe it's going to be a valuable asset to the community.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Galaxy Tab A8 has been waiting for a long time. You are unmuted. I don't have their name, so I can't call on them other than that you're on a Galaxy tablet A8.
I believe it's Donna Terry.
Great.
Okay. 2 questions. One, is the roundabout going to be lit so that you can see it when you're not familiar with the area? Is there going to be reflective? Is there going to be lights? That's what I want to know.
Yes, the plan calls for decorative lighting along this corridor, similar to what will be installed, or I should say identical to what will be installed as part of the West Main project. And that's a very important element. There'll be reflective signs as you approach the roundabout, so there'll be no problem with seeing it as
I
you
don't
at night.
know. I don't mean signs ahead of time. I mean on the roundabout itself.
Well, you can put, there's an option to install chevrons on roundabouts. It's an option that I personally don't generally ascribe to, but it might be a good thing to start with. And but there are signs on the splitter islands that indicate that you have to move to the right. And there will be street lighting showing, and the pavement marking is also reflective. So just like any proper intersection, it should be visible at night.
Okay. My next question. I know that the village will be liable for about $1 million. My assessment has gone up. I'm not happy about it. So have a lot of other people's assessments gone up. I've not been working for 8 weeks. I'm very concerned about that. A lot of people have not been working. I think it's going to be a struggle to pay our taxes. So the cost overruns, have you budgeted for that? Who's going to be responsible for those overruns? And don't tell me there's not going to be them, because there always is. Please comment on that.
Well, I have to say this was something that we really struggled with, because we do know that it is a difficult time for a lot of people right now. And to think about, taking something on like this when everybody's budgets are being impacted was a concern. However, there is a deadline on this grant, and the decision was made to try to move forward and stay within that deadline. The second part of your question, I'm sorry,
The cost overruns.
Cost overruns, yes, thank you. So what we do when we estimate a project cost is we estimate the cost of the labor and materials to build a project, and then we use a contingency that factors up that number because of the known uncertainties of a project. So the cost overruns are built into that estimate. Now, a lot of highway projects, you put the first digger in the ground, the first scoop, and you find something. So yes, but those up to a point, those things are all included in that estimate, unless there's something really wrong, and we've done our due diligence and we don't anticipate that.
Okay, was there any consideration to the parking in the village? Because there's no parking because of the bump outs. That was something also that we talked about at that meeting, and that there is a lack of parking. I cannot find a place to park when I go to my dentist or when I go to different restaurants. I find that very annoying that I have to park in the Save-A-Lot parking lot to go to the dentist, which is a walk of quite a bit.
Well, that's a good point, and we've tried to do what we can. I did mention to the first question tonight that there will be 10 or 12 additional spaces provided closer to North Aurora Street. The downtown Lancaster, or the Lancaster Village Center project, will have a fair amount of parking around it. So, I don't know what the total number of those parking spaces are, but there is a net increase as a result of this project. I will say that it's not, maybe it's not a very big one, but there will be more parking spaces.
Okay, and also the road diet. That makes no sense. You have more traffic, so why would you narrow a road? Why wouldn't you widen a road to get the traffic to flow smoother? And it's only 30 miles an hour. Who the heck is going faster than that? And you should not have a big impact on an accident if you're actually following the speed limit, and no one does on Central Avenue. I had a car up my bumper because I was going 32. That needs to be monitored. Thank you.
Okay. I'm just going to say that the best way to slow cars down is to make the road narrower. And that's what the road diet does on that's what the bump outs do on Central Avenue. And that's what the intent of the improvements on Pleasant Avenue West are meant to do, is to slow the traffic down. With 8,000 vehicles a day on West Pleasant, there's no problem with that. Traffic easily can handle, one lane can easily handle that amount of traffic. So
Right. Okay. Okay. But you also had on one of your slides that the peak hour was at 20:42 p.m. Do you know that's 8:42? What about the AM? What about the 5 to 6 o'clock rush hour?
well, okay, so I should have explained that better. 2042 is the design year that we're using. When you do a project for the Federal Highways Administration, they want to know that the project is going to still work in the design life of the project. So most roadway projects have a design life of 20 years. So if this is finished, if construction is finished in 2022, then we have to analyze the 2042 traffic. We did take traffic counts during the morning peak hour and the afternoon peak hour. And the afternoon peak hour has more traffic than the morning. So that's the one that was shown in that simulation model. But we also have, we have the morning numbers. We have them for we have the current traffic numbers. We can, share with you the traffic study that was done to estimate the additional traffic that's forecast over those 20 years. So there is a, sort of a required analysis procedure you have to use to look at the traffic.
Okay. And the lady from the towers, thank you for your comment. But I kind of have a feeling that that's not enough time for someone that is in a wheelchair or in a walker to cross the lanes of traffic. That is very concerning to me. But thank you very much for doing this.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go to a couple of questions that have come in on Facebook and through the chat. And Jeff, I would like to rapid fire these. We've got 4 attendees with their hands raised, and I've got other questions here that I want to address. And we have 20 minutes left. So what about buses and fire trucks? It seems like a tight squeeze.
Buses and fire trucks can easily go around these roundabouts. If you're looking at your screen right now, that you see what's called the truck apron. It's got a mountable curb. Buses really don't have to use that. Tractor trailers would use that, but it does allow all those types of vehicles, and we've analyzed the roundabouts to accommodate large vehicles, and they all work.
Okay, back to traffic. So how is it that a road diet and signal timing do not improve congestion at all?
A road diet and signal timing, what we did there was we took out those dedicated right turn lanes at the intersections. So right now, when you're trying to cross Pleasant Avenue West, there's 4 lanes of traffic because there's a left turn lane, a through lane, and a right turn lane, as well as the other westbound lane. So when you do a road diet, you take out that right turn, and that in turn mixes them with the through traffic. They can't make rights on red, and that's why the traffic delay increases with the road diet and signals.
Okay, thank you. Why are you using 2018 data and not at the very least 2019 data?
The 2018 data is what's called the average annual daily traffic counts conducted by the state DOT. That gives you the number of vehicles that pass a certain point, over a day. And there's a very complicated factoring method for that, for time of year and season. So we had those 24-hour counts from the DOT, but we did conduct 2020 turning movement counts at each of the intersections. Those were done with video recorders, And so if anybody is so inclined, we have videos of turning counts at both intersections for 3 days, morning and afternoon.
Okay, and then last one, and we'll go to people with their hands raised. How long does it take before GPS systems and related maps get updated to reflect the new road change?
That can happen very quickly if we immediately inform Google and Bing about the project. It's, you know, we have to be proactive on those things, and we've done that before. So, you know, it may not be the day that it's completed, but it could certainly be within 6 months of when it's completed.
Okay, thanks. Next, we're gonna go to Darcy and Greg Soka.
Hit this.
Hello.
Hi.
No, it was already unmuted.
Okay. Hello. Say hello again.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. My name's Greg Soika, and my question is for Committee Chair Lynn Ruda. And my questions are, have you spoken with all the business owners on Central Avenue, West Main Street, and Broadway in the Village of Lancaster? Why did the banners advertising the roundabouts not get put up? I've attended many meetings in person and online. The focus seems to only be on West Main Street. We are now living in the new normal of COVID-19, and businesses are hurting. New businesses will be few and far between. We need to be cautious as the economy is in dire straits. Let us hold off for a year and reassess before stepping into this huge change for the Village of Lancaster. I await your answer, Ms. Ruda.
Hi, Greg, and thanks for attending. I also appreciate the fact that you do attend so many of our other meetings so that you are pretty in the know and you've been following along with the process and the conversations that have been happening. Let's see if I can go in order. I will start with your first question about the business owners. When we sat down with Mott McDonald and Highland Planning and talked about our strategy about reaching out to the public, when we decided to talk to business owners specifically, it were the businesses that were directly impacted by that construction. So we've had our public meetings. We have been open for comments. I know that many businesses have reached out to the entirety of the board, and we're getting feedback that way. So if there are businesses that have not yet given their opinions, I encourage them to reach out to the board so that we have as much data and feedback as possible. As for the banners, I'm actually going to take that to Tanya, if you don't mind. I know that was part of a discussion at one point. We did have trouble getting, because of the pandemic, getting the actual material for the banners, but Tanya, if you want to address that at all.
Yeah.
Well, I would like to go back to Ms. Ruda. I've listened to you talk several times, and I just want to, you've mentioned that you've talked to the business owners in that. Have you talked to all the business owners on Central, on West Main Street, and on Broadway? Because you kind of implied at several of the meetings that everybody was on board for that. And I've talked to several of the business owners and people from the Village of Lancaster, and that is not the feeling they're getting in that. So could you just clarify, have you talked to all the business owners on Central, West Main Street, and Broadway in the Village of Lancaster that this project is going to affect?
I have spoken to every business owner who has reached out to me.
Okay, I understand your clarification now. It is not what was said in the past. Thank you.
There's a third part to this. I'm scrolling. Tanya, maybe if you can read off the third part of that question.
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm trying. I lost it. Here we go. We are now living in the new normal of COVID-19 and businesses are hurting. New businesses will be few and far between. We need to be cautious as the economy is in dire straits. Let's hold off for a year and reassess.
I think that if you've been listening and been a part of the board discussions, there's been a big discussion amongst the board about the timeline and about the funding and about the impact of our businesses. And we're feeling both sides, and we're hearing from our residents. And one spoke today about that they're unemployed right now. And we know that times are really, really difficult. So I think that is why we've already sort of stretched the project. We were supposed to have our public meeting earlier. The village board as a whole decided it didn't feel like the right time. We needed to give our community a little bit more time to see where COVID would take us and see where our businesses are going to be going. We'll definitely be watching as we start opening up into phase 2, 3, and 4. But again, we've also had a lot of businesses that have been encouraging us, please move faster, please get this as quickly as possible. So we're trying to balance what we're hearing from our business and our community.
Very good.
I think that's all of the questions.
Okay, can we go to Richard Friedman? Are you there, Richard?
Yes, we're here. I was doing a little research of my own on the roundabouts, and they did put one in on Hamburg. I noticed you had mentioned that. If you go on YouTube and you find that there have been a couple deaths involved with roundabouts, how is it that 3 accidents, little fender benders a year with, if you will, because we have no statistics and you aren't putting them out there as to what kind of car accidents they are, how does that rate to a death? And people, if you go on YouTube and bring up Hamburg Roundabout, you'll find that they've had a couple deaths with them caused by the roundabout. So how can you guys even think about going on with this?
Okay, thanks for the question. I'm familiar with the roundabout that you're speaking of. It's not one of the ones in the village of Hamburg. It's one that was, forget the name of the road, but the fatality that occurred there was due to the fixed object in the center of the roundabout. So that
was removed.
That was removed, that's right.
Then they had another one.
Which I believe was an intoxicated motorcyclist.
Okay.
So
there you go. You got 2 accidents.
Yeah.
However, you're not even telling us what kind of an accident was at the corners.
Richard, I don't have those that information in front of me. It's in the design report. We're not trying to not disclose it. We have the accident records and the accident diagrams that are in the design report. I just don't have that open, and that's a level of detail that we can either talk about separately or you can see it in the design report when that's put on the website.
We also haven't addressed our parking lot at our location where Wild Art is. When you're taking all those parking spots, how are his customers supposed to get in and out of his parking lot safely? They made him put in so many spots because he put the addition. Now you're going to take those spots. Plus you're taking one side of Central Avenue for parking. Where do you expect these people to park?
And bike paths.
And where is he supposed to put the snow? In the middle of the street? Are you going to remove it? Because there will leave no areas to put the snow in that parking lot.
Right. Well, the snow topic came up in our meeting last week, and that's something that we have to look at in more detail. I will say that, following our meeting, I looked at the parking situation there. There's 3 vehicles between the building and the curb line of Pleasant Avenue. The right-of-way will eliminate one of those spots and force the other one back a little bit, but there'll be one lost parking spot along that corner as the plans show right now. So, that's one spot, and I think a bigger concern to me is the lost spot on Central Avenue right in front of Art's business, and we're looking at ways to try to adjust that design on Central to not affect the parking in front of his shop. But I will acknowledge that there'll be at least one missing spot. So we're doing what we can. The lanes, the single lanes of the roundabout, you certainly don't want anybody parking on them, but we are not affecting his driveway. And we all know that a delivery truck, they sort of do what they want to do. I'm not saying that, you want that to happen, but it's an interesting question these days with more people getting things sent by delivery. And so that was a good thing that we talked about, and we are looking at that as part of this adjustment to the design that we're working on. So we do address, or we do acknowledge the concerns about snow and delivery trucks.
Okay, I'm done.
Thanks, Richard. We've got 2 people with their hands raised still. It's 7:24. So let's go to Greg Smith, and then we're going to Art Lazazera. Greg Smith, are you there?
Can you hear me? Hello? Okay, let me categorically state, first of all, that I'm 100% opposed to these roundabouts. You expect the village to kick in at least $1 million for what you have stated is one accident every 110 days. Okay, you talk about spending $5,000 a year on traffic signals. You cannot tell me in 20 years' time that the village has spent $100,000 on that traffic signal on the corner of Central and Brady. No way. The contingencies are always an issue. I recently sat on a board to have our dikes accredited, and we decided that those dikes were too expensive at a cost of $700,000, and now we're spending $1 million to make one person happy, who's Tom Sweeney, who owns that property now. Okay, if we were to accreditate those dikes, you would affect 300 homeowners who would not have to pay flood insurance. But it was decided that the $700,000 that was the cost for those dikes was too expensive, and now we're going to spend $1 million to put in a road for Tom Sweeney so he can build his buildings and collect the rent off of those things. Okay, since when does a village build a road for a developer? It's normally the other way around. The developer, he goes in, he buys property, he builds the road, and so he turns the road over to the appropriate town. Okay, well, what we're doing is we're putting the cart in front of the horse, and that's just wrong. This village has many expenses which I can name off. Our fire trucks are aging. Our DPW equipment is aging. But the bottom line is these intersections are not unsafe. You had mentioned 10 accidents in 3 years, and it breaks down to 1 accident every 110 days. And I don't think spending $1 million for 1 accident every 110 days is proper spending of our village taxpayers' money. Okay, and like I said, it's taxpayer money. It's not village board money. It's taxpayer money, and I'll end it right there.
I would like to move to Art, given that we have 2 minutes left.
All right, got me now?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. A little deja vu here again. Rick and Karen already brought up a few points for my parking lot here, and I know we talked about this last week, so I won't get into that again. I guess I'm just going to be real general here. it's very obvious to the people, to the residents, other than a handful of people, they do not want this. The people don't want it. You can read the comments on Facebook all day long. It's negative. For myself, it's going to destroy my business that I've worked very hard to build here. I've put a lot of money into this building, and now it kind of wants to be ripped away from me. As we've talked about, and I don't know if the public knows, and that's why I'm going to say it really quick, is that, you know, we run a detail shop here. A lot of people in the village come to us for details. And I can't detail a car or pull it outside with construction because your car will be filled with dust and dirt. Vice versa, I can't be doing high-end cars because that customer will not want to come here to drive their car out to dust and dirt. Also, people avoid construction. If they avoid construction, they're going to avoid this area for a long time. And that's what's going to happen. And I guess that I've never been talked to other than by you guys. Nobody has ever approached my business as far as saying, hey, this is the project we're doing. I didn't know I had to reach out to people to voice my opinion. I thought since the town was going to do this and wants to build this roundabout, that's only affecting myself and Maria at Lancaster Travel, with two businesses being highly impacted by this. I would have think much like what you guys did, Jeff, and you guys came out and talked to us. I would have thought that maybe the village board would have possibly reached out, or maybe come down and see us and, hey, let's really talk about this, and let's work on a compromise. Let's work on, hey, where are you going to do this? How are your customers going to pull out? What's going to happen when one of my customers pulls out of my shop trying to make a left turn and gets T-boned? What's going to happen? I mean, who's going to be responsible for that? Are you going from, and I get the reports are it's 3 accidents a year. I've been here for 6 years now. I've seen 1 accident personally, and I am here 7 days a week, 12, 14-hour days. So they must be happening at nighttime when either everybody's drunk or they're just not paying attention. So, I mean, the people know my philosophy on it. You see my sign. I guess there's no more else I can do, but I mean, the parking is definitely a major issue for us. And I know you talked about it's only going to eliminate 1 spot. From this drawing, I don't see how it's eliminating 1 spot. But, you know,
last week we have sketched out some options.
Right.
Anything more, Art?
I guess that's it. I mean, I guess I've talked to you guys enough about this, so you know my piece on it.
There we go. We lost him.
Okay. Jeff, are you still there? We might have lost Jeff.
I think I'm on mute now,
I hope so. I can hear it.
No, Art, you're not on mute.
yeah. Okay.
So we lost Jeff Lebsack, and I think he's probably trying to make his way back here. It is 7:32. Board, do you want to keep going with some questions, or should we wrap it up? I mean, here's what I'll say about more comments came in on the chat and the Q&A than we were able to respond to. We've captured all of those comments and will include responses to them in our meeting summary. I think one comment I received, which I certainly will pass on to Jeff if he comes back, was, can the village board consider having the construction done at night after hours to ensure business as usual? As a merchant in the village, I feel this would be a total mistake adding a roundabout on Central. So I could continue to read comments, but we're going to capture them all in the meeting summary. And without Jeff, I'm not sure that we can answer the outstanding questions.
Tanya, I'm back on.
Okay. Okay, good. So do we want to spend another few minutes here, or do we want to stick to our time?
I'm happy to do a few more minutes if there's some pressing topics.
Okay, board members are nodding their head. Great. Let's see. What outreach was done in 2018 to the public about a grant for the roundabout?
I can't specifically answer that, Tanya. That was another consultant. There were actually two different consultants working on projects over the 2017 to 2018 period.
Okay. So this next question is about public outreach. I did get a comment. No one came to talk to me at 44 Central or 162 Central. And then similarly related to public outreach, why are you coming to us when you have already made your minds up already?
First thing is where is 44 Central and 62 Central? I'm not familiar with where those addresses would be. If they're north of the of Pleasant Avenue, we initially went to property owners who were immediately adjacent to the project area. So anybody outside of that, there's no impact to the street in front of their property. So that's one reason why we may not have gone to anybody.
To the north and 44 is to the south.
Okay, but there would be no impact to the street in front of their property. As to other outreach, and this goes back to an earlier question, there was an effort in January before the public meeting where two people went door to door at all the businesses on Central Avenue and West Main Street and spoke to many of the business owners. So, you know, there was outreach to the businesses in that neighborhood. They didn't specifically go to private individual residences, but the businesses were all contacted.
Okay, and then is this a done deal, in short?
What's going to happen is we're going to, you know, there's a survey that's going to be open for 30 days. People have been sending in comments via the website or just emails to the village. I've looked at my my counts so far. We've received 30 comments through the Lancaster Village of Lancaster website since the start of the project. We've received at least 8 separate letters or emails that were sent to the Village of Lancaster, either to the Secretary Treasurer or to the Mayor. So, you know, 40 people have taken the time to write and express their feelings about the matter. I have not kept a scorecard on those, but I can say that there is definitely a balance between in favor, enthusiastic support, and, you know, sort of what I would call mixed support, where some people might prefer one roundabout to the other, or some people may prefer one, you know, have different ideas for the project. But it's, out of those 40 plus comments, it's certainly been, you know, it's been an interesting mix of comments. So, and a lot of these things we've heard tonight, you know, there's concerns about parking and speed and safety and businesses. So to end up with the main part of the question, these will all go into the design report. The state DOT will review that design report. It will be up to the village to grant design approval. And I would say that would be probably the decision point, is when it's, you know, when the village decides, are we going to go forward with this and spend the money or not? but that would come up later this summer after the design report has been completed with all of the attempts to accommodate, input from the public.
Okay, a couple more questions around lighting. Will the new lights be solar? Otherwise, there goes traffic signal electric savings. Another similar lighting comment question. Are the decorative lighting and all other new street lighting going to be LEDs? It should, and then in parentheses, needs to be, please.
Yes. So we haven't specified any street lights yet, but the ideal would be to have LED lighting with what are called cutoff filters to make sure the light is all sent downward and does not contribute to light pollution. The question about offsetting the savings from the traffic signals is really not accurate because there currently are lights in the corridor right now. They're very inefficient halogen lights. So they, we're definitely going to be making an energy saving by the lighting through the corridor by replacing what's out there now, and we can even make it better.
Okay, what's a rain garden? How much of the tower's park will be taken? Please, no politicians memorialized in the sculptural area. Why do we need a clock in the first place? So
Well,
first, what's a rain garden?
What's a rain garden? A rain garden is a way that you take the rain and grow plants and trees rather than let it run off the pavement into a drainage inlet. So this is taking rainwater and trying to restore it to its natural purpose. So you do that by reducing impervious surfaces and creating drainage channels where the water goes into a garden. And I showed some examples during the presentation. It's a very common method now of treating both stormwater quantity as far as what flows into the creeks, and then for the water that does flow in, its quality is vastly improved because of the natural treatment process by percolating through the soil before it goes back. So after rain garden was clock.
No, how much of the tower's park will be taken? And I want to add on another question here. Isn't this project taking part of the property from Wild Art as eminent domain? So maybe you can discuss, the use of the private land and how much.
Okay, so right now the estimated right-of-way acquisitions have been shown to the property owners. The next step in the process will be that we will refine those numbers, and then our right-of-way consultant will go speak to those property owners and appraise the value of that property. And that appraisal includes things such as lost parking, economic impacts to a business. So that appraisal is not just purely the cost of land. So the appraisals will be done. We go through the design process, which would include, those costs will be included in the design report. If that's approved, then we would start the acquisition process. And only if a willing seller situation can't be achieved would we go to eminent domain. Ideally, an agreement will be worked out between the village who will purchase the properties and the seller. And if that can't be done, then we'd have to start the eminent domain proceeding. So that's sort of the worst case scenario on property. If they're talking about the Towers Park in front of the Lancaster Towers, there will be a corner taken from that. Approximately 3 trees would be lost. But that's, again, it's less than 1,000 square feet.
Okay, thank you. So now we're going to talk about utilities. Are you improving the sewer system, which actually needs to be updated while the road is up? That's number one. And then a separate comment, will these roundabouts be fitted with water and electric in their centers? The roundabouts in Cheektowaga on Harlem Road are, and it's incredibly helpful for watering plants and lighting holiday decorations.
So at this point, the project does not include any improvements to sanitary sewer. It would address the storm sewers. We're planning on using the existing storm sewers, but we may encounter some areas that have to be repaired. But there's no sanitary sewer funding. We can't use it for sanitary sewers. As to electrifying and irrigating the centers, that's a great idea and can probably be done. You know, we haven't gone into a lot of detail on that. I think we've learned from other projects that adding irrigation is definitely important, because those can't really be rain gardens because they're elevated. So getting some kind of water system to them is important. As to the electrification, that would depend on, you know, what type of uses the village might envision occurring. You know, as you know from Olean, they wanted to put their Christmas tree in the middle of one roundabout, and we did accommodate that with, you know, putting electric to that roundabout. The other ones did not need. You know, if you look at the roundabouts on Richmond Avenue in the city of Buffalo, they have very elaborate lights in the middle of them. Those are, you know, something that we are shying away from because they are a fixed object. And as Mr. Friedman pointed out, you know, if somebody is driving unsafely, people have run straight into these things in the middle of the road. So that's what we're trying to avoid with, you know, putting something solid in the middle of a roundabout.
Okay, let's do two more. So I think there's some confusion about the 3 roundabouts. So how is the 3rd roundabout a private investment if it impacts a public road? And another question, so is this 3 roundabouts?
The project that's funded by the state DOT is for 2 roundabouts at North Aurora and Central. The mini roundabout at West Main and North Aurora Street is funded by Empire State Development. So it's not a private, that roadway is being constructed through economic development funds.
Okay, thanks. And then is the roundabout schematic that's on the village website and Facebook up to date?
Yes, that is the current concept. As I mentioned, when I got cut off speaking to Art, we are trying to make some refinements to the Central Avenue roundabout to address the concerns about parking and deliveries and snow storage. So we are making adjustments and sizing and trying to find a way to find a you know, solution to at least some of his concerns. But we are looking at options there. So and that'll be, you know, those options or those refinements will be in the final design report. And then once we start final design, there may be even further adjustments based on things that happen during final design. So.
Okay, one more person with their hand raised. It's, I'm sorry, I don't remember her name again. Galaxy Tab A8.
Hi, Donna Terry. After all this, I'm totally forgot my question, except that, do we have to do both roundabouts? Or can we just do one? Is it a package deal?
That is, again, that will be decided when the design report and all of the public comments are addressed. You know, we will have to speak to the state DOT. That was not how the grant was awarded. So, you know, I guess the answer to your question is maybe, but we're not sure.
Okay, next thing is, what about people that don't have internet access? How do they respond? Is there a paper questionnaire that we can get for those people?
We have talked about that. We could, you know, the problem we're having right now is with the social distancing requirements. We are a little bit uncertain about putting them in a public place where they could go pick them up. But, you know, as we have the month of June, and that may be what we do is find some place where there won't be crowds and they can be in a, we'll have to figure out how to distribute them one at a time or something. So, but I think that's what we're going to do is look at that, because we do know that's an issue. And as I mentioned at the start of this presentation, is that the village is really trying to make sure that everybody has a chance to learn about the project and voice their input on the project.
Is it printable?
Pardon me?
Is the one that's out there, is it printable?
Yes.
Yeah. And so you could mail it to the village and it would get to us.
Okay, this is my question. Okay, so if this doesn't get approved, if the village decides not to do it, who pays your fee? Where does that money come from? Does the village pay it, or does it come from the grant money?
As of right now, that would come from the village.
How much is that bill?
As of right now, it's about $200,000.
And what is the estimate that it's going to be later on?
A little bit over 400,000.
Well, if we didn't do it, we would save us a $600,000 minimal.
No, the total is the total is 400 altogether.
Okay, yes, but we would be spending $1 million on this roundabout that's absolutely not necessary for our town at this point. Maybe in the future, but at this point, it is not a necessity the way we are now. And I also am very in tune to small businesses, because that is part of one of my jobs. And yes, you are going to kill all the small businesses during the construction. I'm very sad for them, but during this construction, people are going to avoid going into the village, and maybe after they will come back. But your businesses are dying now, and it's just going to continue during that process. So that's my final comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. I'm going to maybe end on this one. While you were off, there was a comment about, can we construct these roundabouts at night to lessen the impact to businesses?
You probably could, but I think the price would probably be 50% higher. So, you know, is that the trade-off you want to do? We recognize that a construction project is a inconvenience, but, you know, recognizing the things we've heard, we would do everything we can to schedule it around certain activities or certain seasons. So we can adjust when a roundabout gets constructed or when a detour happens. We want to have a contract that gives us that power over the contractor. But to do it at night causes its own problems. I'm sure that the residents would not like to hear excavators and trucks and everything else at night with their beeping reverse, protective devices. So, it's inconvenient no matter what time you do it.
Okay, Art Lazzaro has said, my shop will be available to anyone who can't go online. We can input your comments to the site. Thank you, Art. Okay, I think with that, we should wrap. It is 7:53. So we've gone about 20 minutes over. And we don't have your slides up anymore, Jeff, but were we at the end? Did we have one more?
No, that was everything.
Okay.
Oh, well, let me get them here for you. I mean, there is this slide. Is that the one you're thinking of?
I can only see you.
Oh, oh, I'm getting tired, Tanya. Sorry. I got to share my screen, don't I? I went off again. Okay. So, yeah, we were on the question slide. I mean, if we want to just remind everybody what the
Great. So here's the survey link.
let me get it.
Sure.
Okay.
And I'll say while you're getting there, so the recording of this meeting will be posted to the village's website. It will also remain in the Facebook feed because we broadcasted to the villages this event through the village. We will be developing a meeting summary, which will include responses to all of the questions that we received. And we'd like everybody to take this survey before June 30th. So there's the link to the project webpage on the village's website, and there is a link to that survey there now. And then we've also included on this slide the link to straight to the survey, which is we're using SurveyMonkey. So we've got 30 days for folks to respond to that survey. I'd say, let's see, there's only 35 people still on the Zoom. I don't know how many people are on Facebook, but thank you to everybody for participating tonight. I know this is not an ideal method to have a meeting about a project, but I think I'm grateful to everybody for taking the time. And I think if you were on tonight and there's people who you know would have liked to know about this meeting and couldn't participate, please ask them to watch the recording and then submit a survey. So that will remain online. So hopefully we can reach even more than the 100 and something people who attended tonight. Anything else, Jeff?
No, I second your appreciation of everybody who participated. You know, we are in very difficult times, and a major infrastructure project in a village is a very challenging decision to make. And I really appreciate the questions that came in, the comments that came in. But we will, we will go through the process, and in the next couple of months, we'll have a design report that will be sort of a key decision point in the project. So, and like I said, that the draft design report will be put up on the website. I think there's a couple small revisions being made, but that we may be able to get that up this week, or if not this week, it'll be up next week. So thank you.
Okay.